everyone, and welcome to EcoPsych EXP, where we like to chat about EcoPsych themes in games past and present, as well as interview some incredibly talented and thoughtful developers. My name is Casey, and I'm a doctoral candidate at Viridis Graduate Institute. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I'm going to be sharing an interview with Eclair Games about their upcoming game, Ratscum. Ratscum is a narrative-driven game that invites players to experience the world from the perspective of a rat navigating a chaotic, decaying human environment. Through environmental storytelling, puzzle solving, and relationship building, the game explores themes of loss, identity, belonging, and interspecies empathy, all while asking players to quite literally think like a rat. For folks meeting you for the first time, what's the heartbeat of Eclair Games' team? What guides your creative process and day-to-day activities? At Eclair, we aim to create detailed and imaginative world building and deliver an immersive gaming experience to the players. We are open to versatile and bold perspectives that shape a whimsical presentation. What's the origin story of Ratscum? Was there a single moment or conversation that first sparked the idea? Just like all stories started with a what if, ours comes down to the very simple question of how would a rat navigate through a chaotic world? We wanted to craft a story that's simple while heart-pounding, something that's light but lingering in the mind of our players. The game invites us to think like a rat. What new kinds of problem solving or ways of paying attention to the world did that perspective unlock for you as designers? That actually provided us with a quite interesting challenge: to design puzzles that are outside of the box, which require players to utilize the advantage of being a tiny-sized creature to reach a designated location or desired result. Players would definitely be aware of the size ratios and explorable areas in an environment, and sometimes are even required to take certain risks and trick the enemies. How did you approach empathy for a rat, from one rat to other rats, and for the humans behind the walls, without turning anyone into a caricature? We try to introduce complexity in the portrayal of characters so they don't turn out to be stereotypes. And this also depends on how much the players are willing to uncover the hidden facts or aspects of a character as they go along with the narrative. The idea of empathy is something that's shaped by a joint force of our writers and players that would eventually reach different outcomes in the game. Loss, identity, and belonging are big themes. What does home mean to your protagonist? And how did your own ideas of home shift while making the game? The narrative perspective of the game certainly went through several adaptations in early development as we tried to narrow down the theme of the story without making it void or grandiose. We really put our protagonist in an extreme scenario where it appears to be a lone rat in a completely unfamiliar environment trying to find its way back home. So the notion of home could mean where it originally belongs to or where it finds the most comfort along the journey. That also depends on how the players might interpret it. How did you design environments and spaces so players feel the relationships between place and its inhabitants? Given that most of the game will take place in an apartment, we composed a pretty thorough backstory for each of the tenants so the apartments they live in would reflect their past, present, and potentially a future. Environmental storytelling is a key factor in our consideration while designing the space, as we want the players to understand what's going on in the character's life. Not only their occupations or lifestyle, but also their passions or struggles, and have the curiosity to dig up the dirt behind the curtains. I love that alliances matter in the game. What makes a good ally in Ratscum, mechanically and emotionally, and how did you balance trust, risk, and reciprocity between characters? What a great question! Right now we can't disclose too much of the story details, but building connections with other creatures hold a great significance because it not only grants a higher chance of survival, but also fulfills an emotional need of finding acceptance and belonging. These tiny connections might play a bigger role in the later narrative depending on players' choices. The rat's body brings real constraints, no thumbs, but also gifts, heightened smell, and stealth. What was the most surprising mechanic that emerged from honoring those built-in limits? We're really glad that you raised this question, because it's also something we take into consideration while designing levels and puzzles. There would be a lot of unreachable, due to the size constraint of rodents, but this also hints toward more creative solutions. One key mechanic we introduced in the game would be the rat's vision, a gameplay function that serves like a rat superpower, which would grant the players some advantage while navigating through levels. Can you talk about your visual language, texture, light, and color, and how it carries the game's idea of finding something like peace amid decay? We certainly put a lot of work into the visual presentation of Ratscum. We want to execute a more graphical art style that feels whimsical and eerie, while not losing a sense of atmospheric mystery. We also try to employ more organic shape language and texture to balance out the dramatic elements in the story. What design choices help the rat feel vulnerable but not pathetic? Someone that we can root for rather than pity? One key aspect we keep in mind while designing the characters is that we need them to be charming and likable. No matter how exaggerated the shape language might be, we still maintain the designs at a level where they feel approachable and charismatic, while using a slightly unconventional color palette to really pop them out. Are there any moments where a human knowingly or unknowingly helps the rat, or the rat quietly helps a human? Yes, we intentionally wanted to imply a subtle collaborative relationship between rats and humans in the game. There will be moments in the game when rats interact with humans in different manners, and to avoid more spoilers, there might also be moments when the players will make their choices about the way the rat interacts with humans as well. On your website, you state, "We design games that are brief yet profound." How did you decide what to leave out so the game stays lean and meaningful? We try to narrow down and pinpoint one central motto in the narrative so the theme of a game remains simple instead of grandiose. We also like to leave space for pondering when it comes to solutions or conclusions so the players are able to reflect based on their own values and experience from the game. It's our belief that a good story will lead the audience to search for their own meanings. What role do you feel video game developers can or should play in promoting interspecies and ecological empathy? This is a very reflective question. We think what separates video games and other forms of arts like literature or cinema is that games allow a great level of interaction between the media and audience. And as players consciously make their choices or actions throughout the game, both the game and players will be shaped in a personal way. Therefore, the fundamental moral or setting of a game is important because it already paves a potential path for reflecting notions or building an understanding in certain topics. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your process, your intentions, or hopes for this game in the future? The floor is yours. We are currently at the stage of passionately building our first demo, which will be released by Q2, Q3, 2026, and we can't wait to share it with our players by then. We are also super excited and grateful for this opportunity to share about our development path, as our work can only hold value when it's exposed and builds connection to the audience. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Eclair Games for taking the time to participate in this interview and for sharing so openly about Ratscum. The care, imagination, and empathy behind this project really shines through. Ratscum is currently in development with a demo planned, as said, for release in Q2 or Q3 2026, and I'd absolutely keep this one on your radar. Until we meet again, please feel so very free to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, thank you so much for being a part of this little ecosystem.